My presentation concerns the research I'm currently conducting during my PhD at Politecnico di Milano with Professor Gabriella Bolzon. As you can see from the title, the topic deals with machine learning tools applied to the prediction and interpretation of the structural behavior of existing dams. Prediction of displacement is a necessary factor for the safety evaluation of dams. It must be known that each of these structures is equipped with a monitoring system that daily or weekly records the main parameters for conducting the safety assessment. First of all, a monitoring system measures environmental variables such as the water level in the reservoir and temperatures. They can be the temperatures inside the dam body if there are thermometers in the concrete, or simply the air temperature. These environmental factors are related to the loads acting on the dam. The water level determines the hydrostatic load, while the temperature determines the thermal load. I show here, for example, the variation of the water level from 2000 to the end of 2012 in the basin of the dam taken as reference for our study. The graph below then shows the variation in air temperature during the same period measured at two different altitudes near the dam. And what we can see is that there is a clear annual periodic trend for the temperatures, partially mirrored also by the variation of the water in the basin. The other group of recorded variables are those related to the structural response of the dam. Radial and tangential displacements are measured using straight or inverted pendulums within the structure. There are also strain gauges for measuring displacements in the foundation and piezometers for measuring the underpressures acting on the structure. In this case, we focus exclusively on displacements. The drawing represents the cross-section and the view from downstream of our reference dam. And CB2 and CB3 are the displacement we have analyzed. CB2 is the displacement at the ground, while CB3 is the displacement in the foundation. In this slide, I've reported the time series of the displacements at the 2 points. The highest point is shown in green and has a wider range of variation, while the lowest point is shown in blue with a much smaller range, as we would have expected. At this stage, we need a prediction model. We call inputs or predictors the environmental measurements and targets the radial displacement of the point we are considering. For example, CB2. The model is calibrated by fitting it to the inputs and the targets that we know for a certain period, usually 10 years, whether it is deterministic, statistical, or machine learning. Once calibrated, a new measured load combination is given to the model, and it can provide an estimate of the corresponding radial displacement. The displacement calculated by the model is compared to the actual. If the difference between the two is contained within a tolerance margin representing the uncertainties of the problem, the structural behavior is safe. If not, an anomaly is detected. There are several machine learning models that can be used, and we focus now only on boosted regression trees. As the name suggests, they combine two algorithms, regression trees and boosting. A regression tree is constructed through a process known as recursive binary partitioning. For each input variable, each of its values is used as threshold to divide the outputs into two partitions and then to compute the errors between the output values and the mean values of each of the two regions. The variable value pair that minimizes the error defines the first splitting node, and the averages of the outputs in each partition become the prediction of the two branches derived from that node. The definition of the three nodes proceeds in this way. After the first tree is built, the second is fitted to the residual of the first. Then the residual from these two turns model are computed and so on. This is the boosting process. The contribution of each tree is usually shrunk by a parameter called learning rate, new in the slide, that is always between 0 and 1. From this brief insight, we can say that the hyperparameters characterizing our model are three: the number of splits, the learning rate, and the number of trees. Our study tries to apply boosted regression trees to the reference dam that we saw before. We consider as inputs the water level, the air temperature, some derived moving averages on different periods, and some time-related variables. The outputs is the radial displacement in CB2, and the dataset is divided in a training set and a test set. To optimize the hyperparameters of the model, a validation technique called cross-validation is used on the training data between the combinations of values reported here below in the slide. The results are shown in this graph. In the training period, the predictions and actual displacements coincide almost perfectly because the model is fitted on these values, while in the test period there is a slight difference. The performance of the model is evaluated by an accuracy index over the test period. The most frequently used index is the mean absolute error, of which we see the formula here. The accuracy of the model is important because the higher the accuracy of the prediction, the more efficient it will be in detecting anomalies. The most interesting point of this analysis is the interpretation of the model. From the model, we can compute a relative influence index that helps us to understand which influence variables are the most significant on the displacement of CB2 in this case. For example, we can see from the graph that the variables related to hydrostatic load are more important than those related to temperature or time. In conclusion, we saw that from the boosted regression trees model, it is possible to obtain predictions and important information on the behavior of the dam. Although several other machine learning methods are suitable tools for developing data-driven models, the boosted regression tree method is very promising. And in addition to its accuracy and interpretability, it's easy to implement effectively because it requires a few hyperparameters to be tuned. In this context, the next goal of our research is to develop a complete anomaly detection system with this model as core of the methodology and verify its performance on actual or pseudo-experimental data of different types of dams. This is the last slide, and I thank you all for your attention.